Hi everyone, today we're going to be talking about graphing and translating inequalities. Now what we've been doing up until this point is solving and simplifying equations. So if you remember, an equation is anything that is equal to one another. So x is equal to 2. Those are the types of things we've been doing up until this point. Now we're going to be talking about inequalities, and that is where a statement is comparing two expressions that are not equal to each other. And that could look 4 different ways. So today we're going to learn and talk about those symbols and then use them to help us graph. So the first symbol I need you to know is the greater than symbol. And this is how we read this type of statement. We're always going to read it left to right like we're reading a book. So x is greater than 2. So it could be 3, it could be 100, anything that's greater than 2 is what x could be. Then the opposite is x, or when we have a less than symbol. So x is less than 2. So x could be -5, x could be 0, so anything that's smaller than 2. Now when you go to graph those, you are going to have an open circle to show that it can't be equal to that number. It's anything that's either greater than or less than that number. The other 2 symbols are very similar, but you'll notice there's a line underneath. So when you see that line underneath, it means greater than, or it could be equal to that number as well. So this statement right here, again, reading it left to right, x is greater than, or it could be equal to 2. So it could be 10, it could be 100, but it also possibly could be 2. And then the opposite would be less than or equal to that number. So x could be 2, x could be 0, x could be -5, anything that's greater than less than or equal to 2. When you go to graph these, you're going to have a closed circle on the graph to show that it could possibly be that number, but it could be either greater than or less than that number as well. Okay, so here's how that looks on the graph. So when you go to graph these, you're going to want to read what it says first. So when you look at this inequality, the first thing you do before you do anything on the graph is read it. And what this says, again, like you're reading a book, left to right, x is greater than 5. So the first thing you're going to want to do is number that number line. So the number you're given is going to go in the middle. You're going to give me one number bigger and one number smaller, and then determine what type of circle you're going to have at 5. If it's only greater than 5, I need to have an open circle to show that it couldn't be 5. The answer is not going to be 5. It's going to be anything bigger than 5. So it could be 6, it could be 7, 8, 9, 10, 100. Anything on this side of 5 could be the answer. Now the next one, again, I want to read it out loud first, left to right. So n is greater or equal to -10. So when I number my number line, I have to be very careful with negatives. Anything bigger, or one number bigger than -10 is actually -9, and one number smaller is -11. Now when I go to graph this circle, I need to show that the answer could potentially be -10. It could be equal to -10. So that's why I'm going to have a closed circle. The answer could be 10, but it also could be anything that's bigger than -10. So I'm going to shade to the right to show anything on this side of -10 could be my answer. Now number 3 is a little tricky because you'll notice that the variable is on the wrong side. When that happens, it's going to be easier for you and easier for graphing if you switch that around so that the variable is on the other side. So to do that, I'm just going to switch everything. So A is going to push to the left, and then I'm going to switch this inequality symbol around. It actually says the exact same thing, but we're used to saying that variable first, so that's why that really helps. Now I can go ahead and number my number line. One number bigger is -2, one number smaller is -4, and I need to show that A could be less than or equal to -3. So I'm going to have a solid circle, and I'm going to shade everything smaller than -3. Now this one, I'm asking you to write the inequality from a graph. So to do that, usually what I do is pick a variable, I put that on the left, I find the number that I'm looking at, which is 8, and now I need to determine what it's saying of the graph. It's showing everything smaller than 8, and then I have an open circle to show that it can't be equal to 8. So that means it's going to just be less than. Okay? All right, so if you're not sure as we're just learning this, one way to check is you can plug numbers in that you've shaded, especially the shading is what we sometimes feel least confident about. So when you plug in a number that's over here to this inequality, is it true? Is 7 smaller than 8? It sure is, so you're good. Okay, so if you're not sure, just plug a number in and see if you did it correctly. All right, the last little piece here is taking a phrase and making an inequality and graphing it. So translating these inequalities. So to do that, I find the phrase that's going to tell me what inequality is. So for number 5, it's less than or equal to. I have 172 people, so again, I'm going to put a variable, I'm going to put the number, and then less than or equal to looks like this. So I'm going to do what I was doing before where I graph. So fill in your number line. It could be equal to 172, so I'm going to have a closed circle. I'm going to shade everything smaller than that. Now another phrase you might see that means less than or equal to could be there's no more than 172 people, or there's a maximum of 172 people. So keep in mind you might see different phrases that mean less than or equal to. Now I have more than 90% on a math test. So x, 90, I need to figure out what that inequality symbol is. For this situation, it's going to be more than. I'm going to fill in my number line. Notice that I did it slightly different here. You don't have to go up or down by ones as long as you're doing it similarly on each side. It's up to you. Can't be equal to 90, so it's an open circle, and everything bigger than 90. So that's how you graph and translate inequalities. Good luck to you answering those questions, and we'll be practicing this all week.